handed one job to 144 AI workers on this machine, and nearly all of them failed in the same second. So I sent them out 6 at a time instead, and all 72 folders came back finished, and the pacing was the only thing I changed. This machine builds and checks batches like that most weeks, so what you just heard is the boring Tuesday version, not a stunt for a video. And guys, I'm not a software engineer, and if you aren't either. That's the whole reason I'm explaining it the way I'm about to. I found most of this out by breaking it on my own machine, and where I'm quoting a spec, what you're getting is Anthropic's own documentation and not my opinion. So you can go and check each one of them yourself. People have started calling this graph engineering, and I've been running it without keeping a single one of them. There is no workflows folder in this repo, and none in my home directory either. So nothing I'm about to show you was ever saved, and every one of these runs got thrown away the moment it finished. And the last thing you and I do in this video is fix it in this repo while you watch.
Hey, I'm Johnny Nel. I spent years building businesses the old hard way, managing teams, scaling operations, and doing everything manually. Today, everything I built, from automations and no-code infrastructures to fully AI SaaS products, has AI helping in one way or another. Firstly, let me quickly show you this. In South Africa, we call this a braai. I build with AI tools that, in my opinion, anyone can learn to use. My mission is simple: to help creators, entrepreneurs, and business owners get clarity with AI. Let's build smarter together and enjoy this video.
So let me take you back to the middle of June, because what I keep coming back to is what each of those little AI helpers was actually given, and what it gave me back at the end. 72 folders, 2 stages on each one. And that's where the 144 comes from. The first stage essentially got a folder and one job: read it and write a single file back out. The second couldn't start until that file existed, because until then, it had nothing to read. People call the first thing a node and that dependency an arrow. And the way I see it, an arrow only exists when the second worker has to open what the first one wrote. And you might be thinking, Johnny, this is just steps in an order. What's new about that? Well, the difference between a real arrow and a step that merely happens to come afterwards is whether anything crosses. And you find that out by walking your own process a step at a time, asking whether the next step reads what the last one handed you. Because if nothing crosses, there was no arrow there and your waiting was for nothing. Testing that on your own process costs you a pen, nothing else. I call that the arrow test. And the pacing is what killed the first version of my own run, which I'll come back to later. Graph engineering came off a thread on X. And Anthropic's own documentation never uses it once, because what they shipped inside Claude code is called dynamic workflows. That's whose spec I'll be quoting all the way through this. And it's the words you'd have to search for to find any of it yourself. And once you can see where the information travels, you can start crossing out the connections that never carried anything in the first place. 2 steps that don't feed each other can both go at once. And the ones sitting in a queue for no reason stop sitting there. And in my opinion, you can find those in your own process without writing a single line of code. It's like 4 bricklayers on 4 separate walls of a house, and a roof that can't start until all 4 walls are up. Your 4 walls are the steps that never read each other's work, so they all go at the same time. And the roof is the one step that waits for every one of them. That's how the B-roll on this channel gets picked. In one of these videos, 23 placements went in and nothing below 6 out of 10 was allowed through. I know what some of you are going to say. Isn't this just doing more work at once? Not quite. Because the runtime never let my 144 go together. And it won't for you either. It runs 14 at a time on this machine, which is your core count minus 2 capped at 16. And everything past that queues. That formula isn't in Anthropic's documentation. I read it off the tool description shipped inside Claude code itself, so it can change on you. So if 14 was the ceiling all along, why did nearly all of them die together? 14 requests landing in the same instant was enough to trip a temporary limit on Anthropic's side. Not my usage quota, guys, theirs. Sending them 6 at a time spread the same work out, so the bursts never stacked. Now, let's talk about the build, because every one of these workers gets billed as a full worker, and one run of 144 of them costs you more than one long conversation would. Everything I'm showing you is Claude Code version 2.1.2 for Steam on a 16-core Mac, and these numbers most probably move again by the time you watch this. An arrow is just code, so it doesn't spend a turn of thinking, but whatever that code hands into a worker's instructions, your files, your notes, etc., gets billed again on the way in. Anthropic's own documentation says a single run can use meaningfully more tokens than the same task worked through in conversation. Those runs also count toward your plan's usage and rate limits, like any other session. And bear in mind, it's paid plans only. On Pro, you have to switch it on yourself before any of this shows up for you. So why on earth would you run it this way at all if it costs you more? Well, the way I look at it, you're paying to stop waiting. And what you're paying for that is code you write once on the arrow. And when I say the shape, all I mean is the whole picture of it. Every worker you've got and every arrow that carries something from one worker to the next. The shape you're paying into isn't new either, because Gillis Khan and Jack Dennis wrote it up in computer science papers back in 1974. The name turned up in a blog post at the start of July and went round properly about a week ago. Harrison Chase co-founded LangChain, and he posted that he still doesn't really know what graph engineering means. So the person closest to this is also the most careful about the word. Days later, his own company put out a piece he co-wrote, and that one calls it the latest name for an approach that has been around for years. And guys, in the stages video, I told you not to spin up a committee, because delegation has a cost. I'd say that differently now. The cost is real, and you pay it once. At the arrow, in code you write yourself. What still stands is that if the main worker finishes in 30 seconds, you don't need a second one. And if you'd rather not work the pacing out the hard way like I did, we've already solved this side of it inside the AI Founders Vault. You get the worksheet, the real write and check script with the pacing in it, the 3 checker prompts, and the budget guides. The link is down in the description below, and you'll walk into a room full of non-technical founders running this same setup. And here's where I have to tell you about something that happened on my own script, because it changed how I check everything now. Louis Bouchard said it better than I could. A step in a normal pipeline follows fixed rules, but an agent reads its task so it can misread you or choose differently on the next run. So what does a report from a checker like that prove to you? On its own, it proves nothing to you because my own checker matched strings and never argued with what the writing meant. It handed me back nothing serious on a file that had 82 problems in it. And guys, I only know that number because I gave the same script to 3 readers, each one asking a different question, and none of them seeing my reasoning. 27 of the 82 were lines that more than one reader caught independently, and I rewrote my own binding documents that same afternoon. A checker is a position in the shape, a gate sitting on one of those arrows whose only job is to try to kill the finding before it ever reaches you. So anything that gets through has already survived somebody trying to knock it down, which is the only reason a clean report means anything to you. And I personally believe 2 checkers asking different questions will do more for you than a whole stack of them asking the same one. Identical checks will most probably hand you back identical findings, which means if you're checking your own work twice, the second check should be asking a different question from the first. The obvious pushback is fair. The code ran, the log said fine. So why would you pay a second worker to check it? Well, because the log only ever tells you the code finished. The report that came back clean on my script was written by a checker that couldn't read meaning. So those 82 were sitting there the whole time that it was telling me everything was in order. A checker will also hand you a finding that would cost you real work, and that finding gets checked before you act on it. One of mine marked a cut I'd already finished, a full 16 minutes of it, as a repeat of an older video. So 3 readers went at that flag. 3 out of 3 refuted it, the note got corrected, and the video shipped as it was, which is the version you can watch right now. And one more thing, because this one never showed up in any log I had. The builder that assembles my narration audio silently skipped 3 of 12 headings. So my first master came back missing the whole opening and nothing warned me. So now I read the shipped file, not the log that describes it. The builder now counts the headings and stops with a diff when the number doesn't match, which is why you're hearing an opening at all. Which brings me to the one file on this machine that actually does all of this. And I want to walk you through it in plain English. And if you're sitting there thinking this is a JavaScript file and you don't write code, you don't need to. It's basically one stage that writes and a second one that checks. And every worker hands back the same fixed shape. So the next stage never has to guess what it's looking at. There's no workflows folder here. None of it is saved as a command you could call by name yet. Even if you never open a file like this yourself, there's one line in it worth copying. And if you ask me, it's the comment sitting right above the pacing. Because when your own run dies almost as soon as it starts, that comment is the line you change. It says to keep in-flight requests low to avoid burst rate limiting. And the 6 is sitting right next to it as well. So the first move here doesn't need a terminal. It doesn't need a paid plan. And honestly, it doesn't need anything you don't already have on your desk. What you do is you take 10 minutes and a pen and you draw your own process as boxes. One box per step. Then you go arrow by arrow and ask whether the next box reads what the last one handed over. You cross out every arrow where nothing crosses, and you'll most probably find 2 or 3 steps in your own week that could have been running at the same time. Maybe you're thinking you'll do this later once your setup is bigger, but the run you already have working is the one to keep. When a run comes back right, you can save it, and from then on you call it by name instead of typing it out again. There's one of these bundled into Claude code already. And when its checkers can't reach a claim, it now calls that claim unverified instead of refuted, which is the behavior I'd copy. I'm keeping mine for the first time today, so there is a workflows folder in this repo now with one file in it. The takeaway for me is that a step is ready to hand off when something downstream has to read what it produces. And the write and check batch in this repo is named command now instead of something I retype every time. For this challenge, that means the next batch starts from a file that already has the pacing in it, rather than from me remembering what worked in June. I can't say too much yet, but the next one takes this off my own machine and points it at something that touches your customers. Which part of your own process has arrows that carry nothing? Drop it below and I'll be reading through them. If you feel called to it, hit subscribe so you don't miss that one. And guys, if you want the whole pack, the worksheet, the script, the 3 checker prompts, the guards, etc., it's waiting for you inside the AI Founders Vault. And the link is down in the description below. See you in the next one.